We're with Pat Wilson. Pat, you're a senior tutor with the Children and Lost course with the Irish Hospice Foundation and the College of Surgeons. You're also a volunteer with Kilkenny Bereavement Support, and you're a very busy woman. You do work with St. Luke's as well.
Yeah.
And Pat, there's a big day. Thank you, Pat. Pat, there's a very important day coming up next Friday. It's the National Children's Bereavement Awareness Day. Can you tell us something about that?
It is. It's the first National Bereavement Day to raise awareness really about people around the country who are working with bereaved children.
And Pat, I suppose, how can we actually help children who have lost a loved one?
Well, when you consider that 80 people per year die, or per day, die here in Ireland, and that means there's some child's grandparent or parent or sibling. There's a lot of bereaved children out there. And how we can help them is, first and foremost, is by supporting the parent, because the parent is the expert of their own child. And sometimes the parent has never been in this sort of situation before. So sometimes it's about just giving them the language to support their children and what they might say to them, because that's a very common thing that happens, that they come in and how should we tell the children, or should we tell the children? Because you see, the instinct is to protect the child, and in that way they kind of sort of say, as they did years ago, you know, children didn't go to the funeral and they weren't part of the process, and all they knew was that they woke up one morning and a parent or a sibling, somebody left the house and never came back.
And sometimes there are children that are actual forgotten mourners, Pat.
Yes, they're forgotten for that reason, in that we try to protect our children, and we think that maybe by not giving them information, you know, that we're protecting them. But actually, children cope the best when they're given accurate and age-appropriate, honest information and are included in the process, because actually the imagination is worse than the reality. And very often a child will fantasise and will make up something if they're not given the truth.
And I imagine it's confusing for a parent sometimes too, not only they're dealing with their own bereavement and their own loss, but also children can go in and out of grief at a child's level.
Yeah, well, children slip in and out of grief, and that gives rise to people thinking, oh, they get over it. You know, children are very resilient, and indeed they are very resilient, we mustn't forget that. But they will slip in and out of grief as they go through different stages of development and different stages of understanding. And they can only cope with loss for so much at a time. But they do need to have their questions answered, and sometimes that can be difficult for parents, particularly maybe after a sudden death. It can be difficult to find the words to give to a child. But they need to be able to trust the adults in their lives to give them that accurate information.
And that's where this all comes about, isn't it? The Awareness Day and Kilkenny Bereavement Society.
Yeah, and that's for a start, I suppose. They also, children need routine. They need to feel that school is helpful, and playing with their friends and all the rest of it. They also need sometimes reassurance that the death is not caused by anything they might have said or did, because their imagination can run away with them. And if they say, you know, well, I hate my brother, maybe after a row, and something happens to the brother, as an example, they may feel responsible in some way. So it's always important to check out what the child's understanding is of the death.
And that might be hard enough to find out. They mightn't want to disclose that.
Well, sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. You know, I mean, you know, in the same way as adults deal with grief as individuals, children do that too. And they deal with it. Their grief is unique and individual to themselves. It's dependent on the role of the person in their lives. You know, so if it's my big brother, who was the person that took them to Kilkenny matches every year when we won,
yes.
And now there's nobody there to take me to the match every year, you know. Okay. Who's going to do that for me now?
So that routine
it's the role of the person, and it can sometimes be the suddenness of the death as well, and how that happened. If they're prepared in some way beforehand, you know, after a long illness, and they're included and supported through that, sometimes, you know, they do manage better.
And for a parent who's going through that or expecting, you know, because we can anticipate this as well to some level.
In some way. But that's not to say when death comes that it isn't a shock.
No, absolutely.
Because you can still think that this will go on, you know, as it always has done.
And Pat, what support and services are out there?
Well, we're very fortunate here in Kilkenny because in Kilkenny Bereavement Support, which provides a one-to-one service for children as well, we have 5 fully trained, accredited people working with children, and we are very fortunate to have that here in Kilkenny. And that can be accessed through the Kilkenny Bereavement Support number, which I believe you have, but that's 056 77 56538 is the number for that.
And it's available?
And that's available. And there are services available nationwide. But I think it's more important to raise awareness rather than anything else. You know, because if you can support the schools in supporting children in the classroom who are bereaved, if you can support the parents, as I said before, as the experts of their own children, and to be comfortable around the whole subject. And very often children don't need professional intervention, that it's best done with the support of parents and people at home. If they're, and as you say, one parent may be de-skilled, another not, because they might be broken, you know, so broken down by perhaps the suddenness of the death or how it took place, or so broken-hearted. And sometimes it can be helpful for a caring adult or somebody close to the family who can support the child and support the parent.
And is there room there for teachers to educate themselves as well?
Oh, but there is. The Hospice Foundation actually provide a day as part of their bereavement days that they put on every year up in Dublin, and in fact that's very highly subscribed. You'll find that they take on about 30 teachers every year in January. I think it's the 31st of January next year, and it's really about dealing with loss in the classroom. And you know, when they started doing that a number of years ago, you might have had 6 or 7 teachers showing up for that, and now it's always booked out, which is wonderful.
Pat Wilson, thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.